All right, everybody can see that?
Okay, welcome to our seed starting class sponsored by the University of Maryland Extension, Washington County Master Gardeners. And today it is my pleasure to introduce Liz Jones, who is going to be sharing her amazing tips for growing fabulous plants from seed. So hit it, Liz.
Good morning, everybody. I am Liz Jones. I have been a master gardener for 10 years now, 2012. I've been starting plants from seed for a little bit longer than that. I think I started in, oh, hi, Rachel. I work at Carroll County Public Library. So yeah, you can email me. Annette can put my contact information in chat. So I've been a master gardener for 10 years. I start 85% of my plants from seeds. You know, sometimes you go to the nursery and you just can't resist the new tomato varieties or whatever is there. So, you know, you gotta support your local nurseries too. All right, so in the chat, if you want to share, have you started plants from seed? And how did it go? Oh, my TV just unmuted. It's like, what was that sound? Sorry. So starting plants from seed has many benefits. The biggest of which is you get these beautiful seed catalogs in the mail, and they have all these amazing varieties in them. And you're not going to find these varieties at your big box store. It is also very much cheaper. Instead of spending $3 to $5 per plant, you spend $3 to $5 per seed packet and get 20 to 500 plants from it. So it's great. You know, the new hybrid varieties are going to cost a little bit more than the heirlooms, but you can get a lot of value for your money, and it's fun and super rewarding because you have started with a teeny tiny little seed and you've grown it to a plant that is producing food for you. So, all right, good to see that folks are starting seeds.
It looks like a lot of people are, and it looks like there's a lot of 50-50 or so-so, or start out great and then have issues. I did want to ask you, Liz, do you want to take questions all along or do a Q&A at the end?
We can do questions throughout. It's fine with me.
Okay.
So yeah, if folks have questions, just feel free to let me know, or if you raise your hand, I can call on you too. All right, so we have some people with good success, mixed success. We'll talk about hardening off, Sharon, and we will talk about lighting as well. So yeah, Kimberly, I also start way too many seeds. That's why I teach this class, because I'm a little bit of an overachiever with the seeds. All right, so this is my seed collection. So again, this is why Annette asked me to teach this class. They're little photo cases. They're the 4x6 photo cases, and they store seeds really well. You can get them at any craft store. All right. So at the end of this morning, you will learn what supplies that you can use for seed starting and apply the seed starting techniques that we'll talk about today. We'll talk about proper timing for starting different types of plants. You don't want to go hog this morning and start all of your plants, because you'll end up with plants that are too big. You'll end up with plants that are too small. So we'll talk about proper timing. We'll talk about caring for your seedlings and giving them all the care they need to grow into strong, beautiful plants. So those are some beautiful tomatoes. And what will we need to start? And I'll do a demo about halfway through. So we'll talk about the supplies, I'll do a demo, and then we'll talk about caring for your seedlings. So you have your seed packets. These have on the back, it's probably mirrored, but if you look at the back of your seed packet, it has all the information that you need to start your plants. So that is a really good place to, my camera got weird. Sorry about that. So that's a really good place to start when you're starting your seeds, is to look at that growing information on the back of your plants. And then let's see. So this is a packet from Johnny's. They tend to be a little more expensive, but they have this on their packets, which is the germination test and when that germination test was done. So in 2016, this packet's empty. I don't keep seeds that long. So in 2016, when I bought these, they had a 90% germination rate. Some seeds will last longer than others. But I like to keep that one because it has that germination test on it. All right, so here is this is based on our last frost date. I'm in Boonesboro, so we're up on the mountain. It's a little bit cooler here. This will apply to anyone kind of in our climate zone. Annette's going to put a link in the chat to the Farmer's Almanac. It's a calculator. You type in your zip code and it'll tell you when your last frost date is, and you can adjust either way. So I'm going to tell you, don't start your tomatoes today, but you may actually be able to start your tomatoes today. And most of these don't really matter. Like leafy greens, you can start today and they will be fine. Going out to the garden in 6 weeks, like they'll be big and ready to go. You can start, if you live out here in Washington County, you can start your brassicas. Those are your broccoli, kale, cabbage, etc. You can start your peppers. They take a little bit longer to grow. We're going to start some eggplant today, and then long growing herbs like parsley and thyme and rosemary. They take a little bit longer to germinate and to grow. So they're a little slower growing. Your cool weather flowers, start those in about a week. And then your tomatoes and your warm weather herbs, you really, if you're in our area, you really want to wait until the middle of March to start those. And I will caution you, I know we are all totally over winter, but if you think that starting your tomatoes now will give you a jump on the season so you can beat your neighbors to the 4th of July tomato, that is not, it won't happen. And I'll tell you why. So your plants will be really spindly and tall. However, when you plant them, the larger the plant you plant, the more transplant shock it will have. And those roots will need to get established to feed a bigger plant. So once you put your plants in the ground, they take longer to establish. So really, a plant you start on the 16th and a plant you start today will give you tomatoes at the same time. So if you want to get a jump on the season, I would suggest choosing tomato varieties that are earlier to ripen, like an early girl or a Stupichka tomato, something that has fewer days to maturity instead of starting them early. So that is my caution. Like I said, before we started class, I already started my peppers, but it's okay according to my chart. And I'm starting them for the Master Gardener plant sale, which is like 2 weeks before our last frost. All right, are there any questions about seed starting dates?
I did put the link in the chat if anybody wants to grab that.
Great. Yeah, so this is the Boonesboro frost date. Hagerstown, I think, is a little bit earlier. Yes, Annette has the slides that she will share with you all after the presentation today. All right. And you can look, there's charts online. I think the Farmer's Almanac actually has a chart that you can pull up based on your frost date as well. All right. All right, so plants with short germination times. This is if you don't want to baby your plants for 3 months. You can start these at the end of April and they'll be ready to go to plant in the garden in the middle of May. Your squashes, and you really don't have to start these indoors, but it does help to get them established because critters really, really love squash. And they really, really love sunflowers. So starting them inside avoids the birds picking the seeds out of the soil if you're direct seeding and things like that. So it'll just help you to get your plants established before they get some critter and pest pressure on them. All right, soilless potting mix. You will need this I do not recommend the peat pellets because they tend to get more waterlogged than I like. They absorb moisture a little bit more inconsistently. And also the little silk wrapping around them is not biodegradable. So I don't recommend those. I use ProMix for all my starting. It's not sponsored by ProMix. I just really like it. It has a fine, fluffy texture. And it has like, it's real fluffy. And you don't have a lot of sticks and compost type materials in there. So I really like ProMix. You can get it by the bale if you're starting a lot of seeds. Bales are about $40 now. And I got quarter size bales at Walmart last year. So you can find it. You can also use the Jiffy seed starting mix, which has the same texture, but it doesn't have all the nutrients in it that the ProMix has. So they either have peat moss or cocoa coir, which is the coconut husk after processing. I tried it, not my favorite. It tends to dry out a little more quickly than the peat does. Yeah, cocoa coir comes in bricks. And then you add water and it expands, but you do want to add some perlite or vermiculite to that if you are going to use the bricks, because the cocoa coir is not really suitable on its own for drainage. And then someone else asked.
Someone asked about soilless mix, Liz.
Why soilless? It is sterile. So we'll talk when we talk about caring for your seedlings. Soil has microbiology, bacteria, fungus, all kinds of stuff in it, small, teeny tiny little organisms. And we want that when we're growing outside because that helps with the biodiversity of the soil, it helps with nutrient uptake. However, when you have delicate little itty bitty seedlings and the fungus is nibbling at their roots, which is good when the roots are big, when the fungus is nibbling at the roots, it can cause what's called dampening off, which basically will kill your seedling at the soil line. So you want to make sure that it is sterile and that you don't have that biodiverse life in there. You can like use sifted compost. You need to sterilize it first though, which requires putting it in the oven and baking it. So I don't recommend that. It's a lot of work and it makes your house smell stinky. Your whole house will smell like damp soil. Some mixes include fertilizer, but we are going to talk about supplemental fertilization. Great. So Kathy, the Mel Bartholomew mix includes compost. So what you could do is omit the compost and just do a 1-to-1 ratio of peat or cocoa coir to vermiculite or perlite. Vermiculite tends to hold moisture in it. Perlite tends to repel moisture. Either is really fine. So yeah, you can definitely do that. All right, any other questions about seed starting mix? All right, and if anything else comes up, just let me know.
Will do. Someone asked about coir. Did you address coir? What coir?
Yeah, I personally don't really like it. And if you they both have environmental impacts. So some people are concerned about peat moss being environmentally unfriendly because it is so slow to regenerate. ProMix, the company that makes ProMix, actually reinvests into those Canadian peat bogs. Cocoa coir has its own other set of environmental impacts. The coconut farming business has ethical issues with labor and harvest and clear cutting of rainforests. So decide which ecological impact is more important to you and make your choice based on that. The 4 bales of peat moss that I'm using isn't gonna cause a ecological disaster, in my opinion. Yeah, ProMix is available pretty much everywhere. I got mine at Walmart. It's like quarter size bales in like a red package. I've gotten it at Southern States. They do not sell it at Sunny Meadows though. I always tell Ethan, I'm like, can you please get Pro Mix so I don't have to run to Frederick to get it. So
Yeah, I'm lobbying for that too. Brenda asked if soilless mix should be used if repotting is needed before planting outside.
So we're going to talk about starting in containers, but yes, you can use the mix once your seedlings are established. The dampening off isn't really an issue, so you can use more garden. Like you would want to use what you use for containers though. Like don't use a garden soil, use a potting soil. So, but sometimes that does have some sifted compost in it, and that's fine when you're up potting because your seedlings are established, they have their true leaves, their root systems are strong. Okay. All right, containers. Anything that can hold soil will work. So you can use Dixie cups, you can use old yogurt containers. I like the Hexie, the little hexagon 72 cell little greenhouses that you can get at your favorite big box store. I think Burpee, I think they're manufactured by Burpee, but I mostly use 6 cell packs or 4-inch pots. You can chop a toilet paper roll in half, stick those down in a tray, and then you can just plant those right out into the garden, which is nice. And if you want to get a little more advanced, you can also use soil blocking. I have done it. It requires a little more care. And as a person who still works full time, I don't really have the energy to care for the soil blocks the way they need to be cared for. So I prefer to use plastic containers. If you are using recycled containers or cups, you want to make sure you drill or poke a hole in the bottom. One pro tip that I've heard, I haven't tried it yet because I just use the drill. I just stack them up and drill right in the middle. If you have a soldering iron, you can just poke holes in because it will melt the plastic. So soldering irons work. You also want to make sure if you're using recycled containers or reusing containers that you sanitize your containers before using them. Because again, we don't want fungus, we don't want bacteria, we want those containers to be clean and sterile so your seedlings get the best start. And you can sanitize those recycled containers by giving them a bleach dip. That's 1 part bleach to 9 parts warm water, and dip them for 10 minutes. Or you can spray them down, take your spray bottle and spray them down with undiluted vinegar. And then I just let mine air dry. And I do that. I actually sanitize and put my containers away. I will use a 6-pack until it's shredded to bits. So these ones were actually used last year. I clean and sanitize my containers right after I plant, and then I put them away so I don't have to do it all at the end of the season. There is not a best container. You can reuse like the 4-inch nursery pots. You can buy those in bulk. I bought a bulk box of nursery pots one year. I start a lot of plants, and I just finished them off last year. All right, so really anything works. I've gotten plants, I've given away plants in yogurt cups, I've given away plants in solo cups. So whatever works for you and whatever you have on hand. You can also, if you don't want to start in single cells, you can take like a strawberry container, put soil in that, start your seeds, and then prick them out with like a fork and pop them up into bigger containers. I work full time, so I like to start in the containers that they're going to stay in so I don't have to continually bump them up. It also has the added benefit of you won't run out of space. So if you start in all the little 72 cells and you pop those up to 4-inch pots, you will run out of space. And I'm speaking from experience. I have run out of space in my seed starting area because I've started hundreds of plants that I just don't have space for. Sanitizing, again, you use 1 part bleach to 9 parts warm water and soak them for 10 minutes. and we usually get like a Rubbermaid tote, fill it up, and just throw everything in there and soak it, and then I just let it air dry in the sun. All right. So, and this,
Liz, someone asked about for urban folks growing in fabric containers. I think the question was how to sanitize. I would recommend just washing them, or again, immersing them in either of these types of solutions. Do you have any additional tips?
you're talking about the felt grow bags?
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, I just leave mine out in the sun. When I empty them in the fall, we just leave them out in the sun, and the UV will kill whatever is in there. I have a giant like patio garden on my deck that's all felt containers. They're wonderful. Highly recommend them. All right. You can probably run them through the washing machine too, but that might make a mess of your washing machine. So
That's why I thought soaking, if somebody really felt the need to clean them beyond solar sterilizing.
yeah. The other thing is they're black, so they will gather heat when they're empty. We just lay them out in the yard and let them chill for a couple of days. Not chill, because we want the opposite. All right. Mark your plants, mark your plants, mark your plants. I thought I was starting a bunch of bell peppers last year, and I planted them, and I got a bunch of poblano peppers. So I mixed up my bell peppers with my poblano peppers. I've used painter's tape, popsicle sticks. You can use vinyl vertical blinds, cut those off. That's the one picture on the bottom right. Pro tip with popsicle sticks, if you are writing the name of the plant on it, use pencil. Pencil will not fade, whereas Sharpie marker will eventually fade. So make sure you mark your plants. It's very important, especially if you're giving them away. You want to make sure that people are getting what they think they're getting. All right, a warm place to grow. There are several ways you can do this. The easiest way is to get a seed heat mat. I have 4. They're great. This fits a flat of plants on it. And they just emit a warm heat. You want to make sure when you're using the seed heating mat that you're checking your plants and making sure that they're getting the water that they need, because it will dry them out a little quicker. Peppers, eggplant in particular require warm soil to even germinate. And that's soil around 70 degrees. And I use radiator insulation underneath my seed heat mats to give them some extra warmth. You can go low tech. And if you have incandescent Christmas lights, the ones that get warm, you can take bricks, like regular bricks, wind the incandescent Christmas tree lights in between the bricks, and then set your flats on top of the bricks, and that will keep them warm. I also, and you'll see this in a minute, I have a slide about it. I use a 4-tier shelving unit for my seed starting, and I wrap that in the emergency Mylar blankets, which you can get for like $1 at any outdoor store. So I wrap my shelving unit in that reflects heat back at my plants. It also helps to trap the heat from the light ballast in my fluorescent lighting fixtures, and it'll help trap the heat from the seed mat. So even though my seed starting setup is in our unheated basement, my seedlings get the warmth that they need. Cold weather veggies. Yeah, you don't need a heating mat for cold weather veggies. I put them on the heat mat until they germinate, and then I take them off. So I have 2 shelves with heat mats just for germinating. And then I have 2 shelves that don't have the heat mats, and I move my broccoli and kale and things off the heat mat. And some flowers, you actually don't want heat on them at all after they germinate, because they will start to bloom if they're too warm. And you don't want a little seedling blooming. All right, other things that you should keep on hand. Humidity domes are great when you are germinating. You can get the plastic ones, like the little greenhouse kits. You can use plastic wrap. That's what I use, and then I just reuse it every year until it's yucky. So I'm on like my 3rd year of the plastic wrap on my seeds. You want a fan that keeps your seedlings like moving, that makes their stems really strong. A spray bottle to mist your seedlings, and also you don't want to be watering with a watering can the little baby seedlings. I did it this morning and I know better, but I dribbled a little bit of water in my seedlings and I dislodged one of them because it hadn't developed roots yet. So you want to be spraying them with a spray bottle until they get a more established root system. Obviously a watering can, mention the Mylar emergency blankets, and then a power strip with a timer. So I have a power strip, one side is timer and one side is always on. So I have my heat mats plugged into the always on side, and I have my lights plugged into the timer side. Great. All right, this is the sciencey bit. I'm not a scientist, I'm a librarian. I have an English degree. So this took a lot of research. If you're concerned about your Google search history, I wouldn't recommend searching lighting because you're going to get a whole lot of information about a specific cash crop that is not federally legal. So I have taken the brunt of the search history for you. So your seedlings are going to require 14 to 16 hours of direct light per day. That's why it's important to have a timer, because you will forget to turn them on and off. Guaranteed. Done it a ton of times. You want to keep your seedling or your light no less than 4 inches, but no more than 6 inches. Because if the light is too high, your seedlings will grow and reach for that light. And then that's how you end up with spindly, leggy plants. I use shop lights, and I think it was Cheryl emailed me earlier this week and we talked about lighting. I use shop lights because that's what I have. And I don't want to, they're still working. They're working fine. When my fluorescent bulbs burn out and I can't replace them anymore, I will upgrade to LEDs. So I have 4 T12 are the big round standard shop lights. I have 4 of those. I have a daylight bulb and a grow light bulb in each one, and they're fluorescent. They're still working fine. So I'm just going to keep using them until they're not working fine. 2019 or 2020, I purchased 2 4-bulb T8 fixtures. They're the skinnier bulbs. And I got LED daylight bulbs for those. So there's no reason that you have to use a full spectrum bulb. Seedlings require green blue wavelength, which is approximately 6,500 Kelvin rating. So you don't need that red purple wavelength in there. Again, you need that for specific cash crops that you want to bloom. Also orchids. If you grow orchids, you want red light wavelength. So this chart shows you, so you can see in that green blue wavelength is between 6,000 and 10,000 Kelvin rating. And that's circled here on this little light label. This is not what you want. This is a 2,700 Kelvin rating. That's not enough for your plants. So you want a cooler rating, and this is on all light bulb boxes. I got mine at Lowe's, so you can definitely order the bulbs or pick them up in the store. You just want to make sure you're looking at that label and look for, I think what I got were 6,000. They're fine. But yeah, so that's kind of the sciencey bit about color temperature.
Liz, before you hop on, we had 2 questions in the chat box. Do you want to address them now or later?
Yeah, we can look at them now.
Okay, someone asked when it was appropriate to use the fan, if you use a fan on your plant, on your seedlings.
you want it on the lowest setting because you just want a light breeze. And once they germinate, because you don't want that soil drying out before they germinate. So once it germinates, and you can just get a little like clip fan. I don't actually use a fan on mine. I just take my hand and pet my seedlings like once a week. Usually when I fertilize, I just give them a little pet. But if you're in like a warmer area or you're growing in a greenhouse, the fan really helps to stave off that fungal growth. So does that answer the question? I'll show you some seedlings when we do the demo too.
And someone asked if you had an experience with floating seed starter kits.
I don't. I know what they are. They usually use rock wool, I believe. We live literally right next to South Mountain Micro Farm. Like the greenhouse is right behind me. And the owners of the micro farm, we've gone down and visited because they're our neighbors. He starts them in the floating trays in the pools, the aquaponic pools that they have, and I believe they use rock wool. You need a you need the water to be flowing, so you need some sort of aerator, so your roots are getting the oxygen that they need, like an AeroGarden. I have an AeroGarden, and it's constantly every like 10 minutes cycling water through, so you need to make sure your water is moving and not stagnant. That is my knowledge of them. I have no experience actually using them. So that's all theoretical.
Let's take one more question and then
Sure.
let Liz move on, and we can all keep putting your questions in the chat box and we'll revisit periodically. But someone asked if it was always bad. Is it always bad to start your plants in a sunny window?
So I wouldn't recommend it. And we'll go back to why. So you see the sunny window plants on the left. You see how they're like reaching, and I'm moving my mouse like you can see it. But you see how those plants are reaching for the light, and the plants on the right are nice and short and stocky. You can correct leggy seedlings, but they won't be as strong. And also our windows, modern windows, at least if you live in an older house that has like single paned glass windows, you might be okay. But modern windows actually have UV protection on them, so the UV light isn't getting through your windows, because then it would fade your furniture, fade your carpet. So the plants aren't getting the UV light they need through the window necessarily.
Thanks, Liz.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. And lights are not a huge investment, really. Like the fixture might be like $20 and the bulbs are probably like $8. So you really can get lights at a decent price. And you can look online on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. People sell fluorescent light fixtures all the time. All right, this is my seed starting setup. It's very clean. I cleaned it up before I took this picture. So you can see the silver fixtures are my T8 fixtures and the white fixtures are my T12 fixtures. And you can see how I have that Mylar emergency blanket wrapped around the outside. You can also make like an emergency blanket curtain that you put down in front if you really want to preserve the heat. And it has really helped. Like I saw this tip on YouTube. I'm like, you know, it's $2 to buy 2 emergency blankets, and I just have them fastened on there with tape, duct tape. You use clothespins, you can use anything. So it really helps just keep the light, and it bounces the light around too. So it really helps with many aspects of seed starting, and it's cheap. All right, so this is why your light matters. In the top picture, those are tomato plants. The left tomato plant is leggy and spindly, and the right tomato plants are nice and short and stocky. And then on the bottom, that's broccoli seedling. So the one on the right in that picture was started in a window. You can see the leaves are smaller, the stem is not green. And then the one on the left, it's nice and green and stocky. So your plants will just be healthier. Eventually, leggy seedlings will catch up, but they're just a lot more susceptible to the problems. All right, fertilizer. So your seed starting mix may contain fertilizer, but you still want to supplement your fertilizer. And you do this once your first true leaves appear. And we'll talk about leaves later. Here is another pro tip for you. Buy your fertilizer now because if you don't have any, you'll need it for this season. But in September, August or September, your $8 box of fertilizer is $2. So go to Walmart, go to Lowe's, go to Home Depot, and check the fertilizer section at the end of the season and get it for next year. So yeah, I buy my fertilizer, and this is just this is Miracle-Gro. I've used Burpee. I'm really not picky about my fertilizer. You can use whatever you want. I used to use the Neptune Organic. And like I said, I start the seeds in my basement, and my basement smelled like dead fish. So if you're going to use the fish emulsion or the kelp extract, just be aware that it is stinky, and it's lovely. It works great. But it stinks. So I tend to use the soluble organic fertilizer, but it really, whatever works for you, whatever you can find, it doesn't make a difference. If you're an organic grower, obviously grab an organic fertilizer. So you want a complete soluble fertilizer. It should have seedling instructions on the back. If not, just mix it to a quarter of what the instructions say. So if it says a quarter cup fertilizer to 1 cup water, do 1 tablespoon of fertilizer to 1 cup water. All right. And you're going to do that. I usually, it depends on my watering schedule. I will do it once a week unless I just watered the plants, and then I'll stretch it out to 10 days. So I'm generally watering my plants every 2 to 3 days once they're going. Great. And this is why fertilization matters. The flat on the left was fertilized. You can see how green and lush the seedlings are. The flat on the right was not fertilized. You can see they're yellow. Some of the leaves are dying off. They're not as big. These were started at the same time. So the fertilization is really important to give your seedlings the best possible start. Fertilizer is absolutely necessary, Lucia. Definitely, because there's your seedlings, depending what you're growing, are going to be in a sterile potting mix for 6 to 8 weeks. So they're not getting any nutrients, especially if your mix doesn't contain any additional fertilizer. If you don't want to fertilize weekly when you water, you could get a time release fertilizer like Osmocote and sprinkle a couple granules on the soil after your seedlings emerge, but I wouldn't. Osmocote's pretty good. I wouldn't use just a granular fertilizer because it could burn your plants. How often do you fertilize? Every 7 to 10 days. I just do it whenever, when my plants are dry, I'll mix it with the water, and that's their watering for that go around. All right, so let's go. I'll do the demo now, and then we'll talk about caring for your seedlings. Does that sound good, Annette?
That sounds great. One question that we got in a previous class about starting seeds, is it okay to mix up, say, a gallon of fertilizer at a time and then use that for your weekly fertilization?
Yes. Synthetic fertilizer is probably better to do that with, like a chemical fertilizer, non-organic. Organics are still made of meals and such, so there is like soluble chicken poo in them or something. So if you are mixing them up ahead of time and cap them, they can get kind of stinky. So yeah, you can, but really just take your little thing, add a tablespoon when you're filling your watering can is
Okay.
normally what I do.
Thanks.
You're welcome. I'm going to turn on my camera on my phone and readjust a little bit here. So just give me 2 minutes. Everybody get up, take a stretch break. And I will be right back. I just need to get my camera on for the demo.
Thanks for all your good questions. I really appreciate that.
Right, I'll be right back.
If you have a question, that means somebody else has the question. That's why I pulled a question from another class that we had. Anybody that's joining us later, if you could put into the chat box where you're joining us from, we kind of like to get an idea of what our reach is for the class, or maybe where you heard about us, whether it was Facebook or newspaper or garden club or a master gardener. So that's helpful to us. And also to those who joined later, I will be sharing the slides 2 ways. You'll get a PDF of the slides, so you'll have that for reference. We'll also be we'll be copying this video and posting it on our YouTube channel. You'll get a link to that. And you also get some handouts. And if you joined us late, Liz and I both posted a link to seed starting dates. So we have that. And I'll also share the handout that Liz prepared for this class on seed starting dates. So you're going to get a lot of stuff after.
All right. Can you hear me all right, Annette?
Yes.
All right. And you can see me?
You bet.
All right.
Dancing.
All right. So we have our soil. And like I said, I'm going to start in 6 packs today. And I'm going to be starting some eggplant because I didn't do it last week. All right. So we got our seeds. We got our soil. This is just dry. My hands are going to get very gross. So this will be fun. All right. So I have my watering can. Soil is important not to have too wet and not too dry. So this obviously, you don't plant your seeds in dry soil. So we're going to add some water, and you can see it's kind of repelling the water as I add it. And I mix it up like brownie batter. It's very fun. It's fun
Liz,
to get your seeds started. Yeah.
I hate to interrupt, but are we to be able to see your hands because the camera is not adjusted so that we can actually see what you're doing? So you might
can't see them.
I can see you, I can see your hands working, but I can't see what you're actually into. So I don't know if you need to adjust your camera.
Okay, I have a tray of soil. Can you see my tray of soil?
Barely.
No.
Barely. Okay, is it lighting? Is it too dark?
I don't think it's the lighting. I think it's actually the angle of your camera.
Okay, let me see if I can get it closer.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, the demo cam is staying small while the speaker can get big. I don't know.
Can you spotlight the camera?
I don't know that I can, but when you did the test earlier, I was seeing everything.
Okay. Let me try this. I'm gonna turn my mic off on my camera and put my mic on. No, that won't work because then I'll get feedback. Let me see. Sorry.
Why don't you work where you could try working where you are and then lift it up and show it in the space that you've been teaching from. That would work too.
Okay.
And in the meantime, Karen Becks, thank you for your interest in the Master Gardener classes. If you email me, I'll pop my email up there. I'd be happy to send you some information. There you go. Bingo.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
And it's not flipping back to me talking?
No, this is
Sweet.
perfect.
Okay, I got the spotlight on. All right, and the angle's good? Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, so we're mixing up the dirt. It's still a little dry for my taste. So it really, all right, so you can see it's crumbly. You want it to be able to pack. So I'm gonna add a little more water. It's better to add water briefly, like add a little bit at a time, because you can always add more water. You can't take it out. All right, so it's getting to where I like it. And you are just going to add water until you have like dry brownie batter or the consistency of like a wrung out sponge. All right, so this is where we like it. I'm making a big mess. All right, so you can see that it, like when I squeeze it, it squeezes and holds, but it's not like soppy. And then when you like crumble it, it crumbles. So that's kind of the consistency you want it. When you squeeze it, you get a little bit of water, but not a ton, and it holds together. Okay. And what we're gonna do is you take your container, fill it up about 1/4 inch. I fill them up pretty well and then pack them down.
I'm going to interrupt just for a second,
Sure.
just to say, if someone mentioned that the demo cam shot that you're using is very small. If you go up into the right corner of your screen and select view, if you select speaker view, that's going to make that image larger, and it will also make Liz prominent front stage center when she's presenting later too. So try
Yeah.
that.
Actually, the speaker view will be my computer because I am using my mic on my computer. So, but yeah, it should be spotlight now. So it should be right in the middle. All
Yeah.
right. So you take your seed packs and don't like press down really firm. You still want some like air pockets in there. So I have mine filled about 1/4 inch from the top. And depending on the seed size, you don't want them too full, but you also don't want too much space. So eggplant, pepper, tomato, you want about 1/4 inch. Little teeny tiny seeds like snapdragons, literally just dust the top. So these are last year's seeds. So I'm gonna sow 2 to 3 per cell. Because they're older seeds and I might not get a great germination. I have not bought any seeds this year yet. So your seeds will keep, especially if you keep them cool and dry, your seeds will keep for probably 2 to 3 years, depending on the seeds. Lettuce seeds don't last more than a year. Onion seeds don't last more than a year, but peppers and tomatoes and eggplant I have had for several years and they've been perfectly fine. The larger the seed, the longer it keeps usually. All right, so I have 3 seeds per cell. And then I'm going to cover them up. I just sprinkle the soil on top. Give it a nice little fluffy sprinkle of soil. You don't need a ton. And then just level it off and pack it down. And this is where your spray bottle comes in handy, because you're going to take your spray bottle. You don't want to water it with a watering can, because the watering can can dislodge your seeds and make them float up to the top. What you want to do is just give it about 3 to 4 spritzes just to water the top. And again, it's just we shop at Lowe's a lot. Shop wherever you're comfortable shopping. It's just a Lowe's like quart size spray bottle. Take your plastic wrap, or if you have a greenhouse kit, take your humidity dome, pop that over. And what I do for the flats is I will do seed. So I'm not going to label this because I know what it is. I'll label it later. Sorry. I took the flat here, and you can't really see it because of the lighting. But this is kale that I started last week. I took the container and just put a little piece of painter's tape on it so I know what it is. But now that they're germinated, I'll put popsicle sticks in there. Yeah, Susan mentioned that they started 2019 basil seeds. They're really fine. Like, I keep mine dry. I keep them in the basement during the summer so they stay nice and cool. All right, so that's how you do it. That is basically it. And then what I want to show you also, so these are kale seedlings that I started last week. Again, these seeds are from 2020, I think. So I sowed 3 per cell. Kale seeds are like warrior seeds. They will germinate forever. But you know, just in case. So you can see some of these. So when, instead of using a fan, I just go like this and rub my hand over the top. That helps to strengthen the stems. But you can see, so there's one right here that's like really wimpy. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pinch that out because it's not going to grow in anything. So what you're going to do, we're going to talk about it on the next slide. You're going to want to thin your seedlings to 1 per cell, and you should choose the strongest one once it gets its full seeds. So are there any questions about the seed starting? Really easy. The biggest thing is to make sure that your seed mix is the right moisture level. If it's too wet, your seeds can rot. If it's too dry, they won't germinate because they won't have enough moisture to soak up. All right. Any questions about that? All right, I'm going to turn this off and then we'll get into caring for your seedlings. Give me 1 moment to unspotlight here. All right.
We had a couple questions. Do you want to address
Sure.
them now, or do you want to keep rolling?
Yeah, I can talk while I'm turning this camera off.
Okay, somebody wants your most likely to succeed seeds.
Kale for sure. And kale is delicious and healthy. Kale is a good one. Basil, someone mentioned earlier. Sunflowers, any squash. Tomatoes are really easy. The hard ones for me are peppers and the long growing herbs. So parsley is really tough. And peppers are tough just because they are babies and they like it really warm. Yeah. Zinnias also are really easy. And lettuce is easy, but you need to buy fresh seed every year because the seed just doesn't really last that long.
Okay, and we had 2 follow-up questions to things you talked about earlier. Someone says their grow light system has an elevated tray.
Yep.
How could they use a heating pad if it won't touch the tray? Will it work? I'm wondering if your Mylar wrap would help
Yeah.
hold the heat in.
Yeah, the Mylar wrap would hold the heat in. So when you talk about elevated tray, that means like you move the tray instead of the lights. Is that correct?
That was a question from Susan Mako. So Susan,
Okay.
if you could elaborate, that would be
Sorry
helpful.
about that. It's from Gardener's Supply. It's a teacher's grow kit. And no, the tray stays still, but it's raised about 4 inches or so the way the stand is designed. The tree is about 4 inches off of the countertop and it stays there. And then the light can only move down so far. So I can't even get it has like a safety thing. I can't get the light quite close enough. But I was really worried about the heating underneath. I'm not sure what to do.
Yeah, you could elevate, so do the brick method and do the lights under the bricks. That will elevate your tray, like your plant tray, and also warm it from the bottom. So the bottom warmth is really what you want. Let me look if I can see what this looks like.
Yeah, the tray is in a locked spot about maybe, and I went on the website, they're different looking now, but mine is maybe about 6 inches off of the ground, and it's a locked bar that is where the trays sit.
You could also put the heat mat in the tray, but you don't want it like touching the tray. So you would need to elevate it on something like blocks or something like that.
Okay,
or like something perforated, like a piece of pegboard. Just so you're not trapping too much heat under there, because you also don't want your plants to get too hot.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mallory is asking about full spectrum. Yeah, absolutely. If you have one, use it. But you don't need it. Like my Arrow Garden has a full spectrum. It's fine. They were very expensive several years ago. The cost has come down significantly. So if you want to invest in the full spectrum, like purple LEDs, totally go for it. They still need to be like 6 inches above your plants though. So like sometimes they'll show them in the picture where the LED, like they usually come in like squares. They'll show them in the picture where the LED is really high up and you have all these lush plants underneath. It doesn't work that way. They still need to be down close to your plants. So just make sure you're doing your research. And I plan to, once my fluorescents die, I plan to invest in some LED lights. I really should, just to try them so I can answer questions better. But yeah, if you have it, use it. It's not going to hurt. It's just not necessary. All right. Any other questions before we get into caring for your seedlings?
Bonnie asked, and you might be talking about this later, her seed starting mix is all purpose, but her potting soil is for containers and has fertilizer in it. If it's got fertilizer in it, does she need to fertilize additionally? I'm assuming she's talking about when she pots up to a larger size.
I would just keep using that quarter dilution. Your potting mix, it's usually slow release fertilizer that's designed to last throughout the season. And there's usually not enough, in my experience, there's not enough fertilizer in it to really keep your seedlings going. And the liquid fertilizer goes right to your seedling roots, so they can take it up right away. So I would still fertilize until you get it in the ground. And it really does make a difference. I promise. Try one flat fertilized and one flat unfertilized and see what it looks like. All right, so let's do caring for our seedlings. So the reason we want warmth is cold, wet, exceedingly wet or exceedingly dry conditions will delay your germination and it'll make your plants grow more slowly. And it takes some practice. My hands are still really dirty, so I'm gonna have to clean my computer after this. So it keeps your plants from doing their best. So make sure your conditions, you want nice warm conditions, and you definitely don't want things sopping wet. When your seedlings sprout, uncover them, and that's when you really want them under lights. So you don't have to have the lights turned on when you plant them, but since you're planting different seeds that grow at different rates, I just put them right under my seeds right away, or my lights right away. So dampening off is the fungal disease that we talked about. This is really accelerated if it's soggy and stagnant in your seed starting area. So this is why a fan and the sprayer is good, because you're not oversaturating your plants. Once your plants get more established, then what you're going to do, pretend this tray has seedlings in it. You're going to lift up your seedlings and you're going to pour the water into the tray, and that will allow the water to wick up from the bottom. That serves two purposes. It keeps your plants from getting too wet. So what I do is I pour the water in the tray. Like you'll notice when the tops start to dry out, because they'll start to lighten in color. When that happens, basically what you want to do, once those tops darken, you dump out all the rest of the water. So it's wicking up from the bottom, and that keeps your plants from getting too soggy. And it also, since they're wetter at the bottom than the top, the plant instinct is to pull the roots down toward the water. So it's going to increase your roots reaching for the water. So your root system will grow and develop more robustly. All right, and then true leaves. So the kale seedlings I showed you, I didn't move my light back. I apologize. The kale seedlings I showed you, these are the seed leaves. They look like little hearts. The true leaves will look like itty bitty mini kale seeds. So these I planted Monday and they're already up, they're already growing. They should have their true leaves in just a few days. But once the true leaves appear, that's when you want to start fertilizing, and that's when you thin your seedlings as well. Because the more seedlings you have in there, the more they're going to compete for water and nutrients. So you want one plant per cell. If you do not want to commit seedling aside, you can prick them out with like a fork and plant them in another container. But be aware, you're also starting double the amount of seeds that you intended to start. All right. Oh, sorry, I'll show you the kale seedlings when we're done. These are seed leaves versus true leaves. So you can see this is actually a melon seed or a cucumber seed. On the side, the seed leaves are the first things that pop out, and the true leaves look like itty bitty plant seeds. All right, let me stop sharing for a second. I'll show you these. All right, can you see me real big in the middle? These are your seed leaves. So in kale, they look like little hearts. But once the true leaves come out, they'll actually just look like kale leaves. So those are the seed leaves. And I would prick out like this one, for example. This one looks the wimpiest, but it actually, like, because it's shorter than the others and the leaves are smaller. But this one is probably actually the best one to select when you're thinning, because it's stocky, it's short, but I'll wait till the true leaves come out to make that determination. And like this one right here is not great because it's a little, like, it's caught up, and the stem is really thin. So you're gonna select whichever one looks the strongest. And that doesn't necessarily mean the tallest one, just the one that looks the most robust. All right, so to recap, when they're true leaves, yes, you thin and start to fertilize. And yes, that is correct. And then until your true leaves appear, you want to do the spray bottle to water. And it's all practice. You know, you're going to make mistakes. Some years, some things will grow better than others. And it's all just practice. Like I said, I've been doing this for probably 12 years now. And I still make mistakes. So don't beat yourself up. And every year you learn new things. All right, let's talk about hardening off. Hardening off is when you begin the process of getting your plants acclimated to your garden space. And so you don't want to take your plants from this nice, perfect environment where they're getting 14 hours of sun a week, they're tucked into their little tent, they're feeling good, they're warm, they're getting babied. You don't want to take those and then subject them to the big wide world outside. They will hate you for it, and they'll keel over and they will not be happy. So what you're going to do 10 to 14 days before you plan to plant them, you're going to start moving them outside to get them used to the outside conditions. There is a fact sheet if you go to the University of Maryland Extension on cold frames. If you're feeling industrious, you can build a cold frame. I had one for a while. It was awesome. We don't have one at our current house. So if you don't have a cold frame, which most of us probably don't, or you aren't growing in a greenhouse, what you're going to do is start moving your plants outside into a wind protected area, but also a place where it's kind of shady. So our front porch gets morning sun, but not afternoon sun. So I start by moving them out to our front porch. And every day I move them a little further out, so they're getting sun. And then you gradually leave them out longer and longer every day until they're out for the full day. So you do that over the course of 10 days to 2 weeks. Make sure you bring your plants indoors at night, especially if low temperatures are expected, because you don't want to baby these tomatoes for 8 weeks and then have them killed by late frost. It is really complicated. I like winter sowing is great for a lot of things. I never do it for tomatoes or peppers because I like the control over those two. Yeah, winter sowing is super easy. It's especially great for like pollinator plants. All right. All right, so that is it. I'm happy to answer lingering questions, go back over anything else that you are interested in hearing about. If there's something I didn't cover today, I'm happy to, if I have the answer, I'm happy to answer it. If not, I can definitely, you know, look up, do a little research and get back to you on it too.
I just had one comment about hardening off. If you have something like a little red wagon that you can put
Yes.
a couple of your trays in and just roll them in and out, back and forth, that makes life so much easier. And we did have a question from Bonnie about grow bags. She likes to grow plants in grow bags. Are there any guidelines for how many plants to start in a given size bag?
So it's all about experimentation. I have, oh, they're out in my shed. I have a variety of sizes. We do the peppers in like the 5, Ryan's not here, so I can't ask him. I have like 5 gallon, 10 gallon, and I have like giant 25 gallon ones. I usually do 2 peppers or 2 eggplants per like 10 gallon pot. And then the bigger ones like tomatoes and stuff, I do in the giant ones. Your tomatoes need a lot of water and a lot of root space. Peppers and eggplants tend to need a smaller amount of space. And when you're growing in containers, even if your potting mix includes fertilizer, you still want to fertilize at least once per season. I usually fertilize my my fruiting plants, my peppers, tomatoes, my eggplants. I usually fertilize those when they set flower. So I will give them some granular fertilizer in the soil, and then I will give them a foliar fertilizer. So I water the actual plant, and I use More Bloom, which is a liquid fertilizer that helps with flowering.
I'm sorry. I thought you said to fertilize once a week, not once a season.
That's for your seedlings. Once they're planted out, someone asked about growing in containers.
That was May.
Yeah, so I'm sorry for the confusion. Yes, once per week for your seedlings, and then once to twice per season once they're planted out, especially for growing in containers.
When you say for the seedlings, is that only after they germinate and start showing, or?
Yes, once they get their once they get their 2 true leaves, then, and I'll pop up that slide again. Once they get their true leaves, then that's when you start doing your 7 to 10 day fertilizing. Sorry, let me share that.
Because I have snap peas that are like 3 or 4 inches tall.
Mm-hmm.
When do you transplant them? Is it just as soon as they get the true leaves, or how big do they get?
Your snap peas will get big really quick. I generally start those directly in the I generally start peas directly in the garden. Why is it not sharing my PowerPoint? I apologize. My PowerPoint's frozen.
Which slide do you want? I might be able to bring it up on mine because I had opened mine.
It now. Sorry, snap peas I usually start directly in the garden. And you are probably good to plant. Watch the weather because you don't want to hard freeze. But you're probably good to plant those out like in 3 weeks. I usually plant my snap peas at the end of March.
Got me worried because they're in a window, but I have grow lights on them and they're kind of growing straight up. Is that not correct?
No, that's right. That's how they grow. You can also, for pea shoots, you can prune them. So you can cut off the top and like eat them in salads.
Are they one of the ones, I'm sorry, I don't mean, but are they one of the ones like 2 per 10 gallon, or can I use a 1 per 5 gallon?
I space, so when I grow them in big pots, I just space them like it should have your spacing on the packet.
Yeah.
But I usually space mine 4 to 6 inches and put like a trellis in it.
You put a trellis in it from the beginning?
Yeah. so they can climb. Or like we have a cattle panel, and it's fastened to our deck railing, and my snow peas climb that.
It's into your railing, like that goes around your deck?
Yeah.
A where do I get that?
You can get them at Tractor Supply,
Okay.
or you can just use like hardware cloth, or not hardware cloth, like the 2-inch rolls.
Chicken wire? Are you talking about
Chicken
chicken wire?
wire. Yeah, and then like the concrete, the mesh that you put in concrete. It's like 4-inch grid.
We've had a couple of questions about when to start things. Again, I'm going to be sending out Liz's chart to that gives you a guide to when to start different plants. Someone asked about defining winter sowing. Do you want me to handle that one, or do you want to do that one, Liz?
Sure, I haven't done it much.
Okay. Winter sowing is a technique for growing, starting plants from seed in the winter without grow lights. You're basically growing them in a recycled container, like a rinsed out milk jug or water jug. And our last class was on winter sowing. If you'd like, I can attach, if anybody is interested in getting that, you can let me know. I've already shared my email address, or I can include a link to that video with this. It's just a different technique. It doesn't work for everything, as Liz says, but it's a nice technique for native plants, pollinator plants, and a few other types of plants. You and I are best growing.
Yeah.
Oh, hold, how to water from the bottom. They're wondering how much water should be in the tray.
1 inch to 2 inches. It's not going to soak all of that up. So you can either dump it back into your watering can and use it for the next flat, or you can dump it out.
Oh, and I am actually, while we're doing this Q&A, I'm going to launch a poll that we try to use to gauge our effectiveness in teaching. Although personally, I think Liz is amazing. I'm not supposed to prejudice, am I? But here we go. There I am. So I'm launching the poll. So if you take a moment to answer 5 short questions, so that helps us improve our classes.
All right. Mallory asked about cucumbers. Mallory, I would start those like middle of April because they grow really quickly. But you can also direct sow cucumbers right in the ground. Just make sure you're protecting them from squirrels. Squirrels really love cucumber seedlings. Really, really love cucumber seedlings. And birds will eat them too. So if you want to start them indoors, they only need like 4 weeks to grow max. So you can start those around the middle of April. Let's see. Marissa asked about hardening off. Bring them in the first week or so. You want to bring them in every night. And then if it's going to get down in the 30s, definitely bring them in. I wouldn't even even if it says like 34, I would still bring them in because the weatherman doesn't always know. So if it's going to get really chilly, make sure you bring them in or have some sort of frost protection for them. All right. Kim asked about grow bags. Again, this is for outdoor, like are we doing a container gardening class at all, Annette, this year?
Not yet.
Okay.
That's not on the schedule yet.
Okay. So keep an eye out. We might add a container gardening. I do not use new soil every year. What I do, with the caveat, if your plants have any diseases or anything, yes, toss the soil. So if you get blight, if you have any pest pressure like squash bugs or cucumber beetles or any pests, what will happen is those pests will nest in the soil. So if you have pest pressure or disease, get rid of the soil. You don't want that in your plants the next year. If your plants are healthy and happy, what I do is I take all of my grow bag soil, I dump it into Rubbermaid bins, and I add I add new soil, but I don't use all new soil. So we mix half old soil and half new soil. And then I mix in an all-purpose garden fertilizer. Either I like the Epsama Garden Tone, but you can use whatever granular fertilizer you like. I mix that in, and I also mix in some worm castings to the new soil because you want to refresh the nutrients in that soil. So I hope that answers your question on that one. Rachel, I sent you a direct message with my Carol email.
Thank you.
Yeah, Susan, when you bottom water, I don't know if we answered this. When you bottom water, you're gonna see with your seedlings, the top, I should have not watered my plants today and then I could have showed you. You're gonna see the top of your seedling tray. It's going to get a lighter brown. That's when you know it's time to water. And you'll get the hang of it. Like you'll know when your seedlings need water. What you're gonna do is you're gonna dump about 1 inch to 2 inches of water in the tray. And you're gonna wait 5, 10, 15 minutes for that water to wick up from the bottom. And when the top of your seedlings, when the soil on the top starts to darken, that's when you dump out the water. You don't want to leave the water in the tray, only until it wicks all the way up. All right, Laurie said they would want winter sowing. Yes, please share the winter sowing link. Yeah, Rachel suggested Esther's gardening for winter sowing. Cheryl Mann is the person that invented the technique. Cool weather flowers. These are your frost tolerant flowers. Your snapdragons, bachelor's buttons. Okay, so Lisa Ziegler is the Cool Flowers lady, and she has a book called Cool Flowers. You can probably get it at your library, or she has some free webinars on her website. So it's Lisa Mason Ziegler. I can put it in chat. She talks about cool flowers, but it's mostly your spring flowers. So things that you plant in spring, they're frost tolerant and they will tolerate a frost. So my snapdragons are already starting. I think this is how you say her last name. It might be Zeigler, but she talks about cool flowers. All right. Susan's good. The light bulb went on. You're very welcome, everybody. Yeah, it's totally possible not to water every few days. Don't put boiling water, like let it cool, because it might kill your roots if it's too hot. You can also get the sticky traps for fungus gnats. That fungus gnats are an issue, so they're an indicator that you're watering too much. You don't want to let your soil dry out completely, but you don't want it wet constantly either. So fungus gnats are definitely an indication that you are watering a little bit too much. All right. Any other questions? Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Yes, and thank you, Liz, for teaching, and thank you, everybody, for attending. I will also add you to our horticulture mailing list since you shared an email with your registration so that you'll find out about other classes that we offer. Thank you for the thank yous.
Thanks, everybody. My pleasure. You try it, you'll learn it. Do it again next year, you'll learn more. Every year is a learning experience.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna, for coming.
Thanks for having me. I learned a few more tips this week.
I'm glad. Did you say you were from DC?
Yes.
Okay, I think your frost date's really similar to ours. so you should be able to follow the seed starting dates and things.
Sure, sure. That's what you are like our neighbor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody that Bonnie asked if she could get in touch with us for questions in the future. My email is in the chat, and you're welcome to send anything to me and I'll forward to Liz. It's acormany. I'll put it in there again in case anybody wants to have it. acormany@umd.edu. So there you go. You got me. So you know where to find me. Or if you have any other bug and plan questions.
Annette is really good about answering quickly too. Thank you, Annette.
Thanks, Kathy. We try. All right. Well, I think this is officially ending our seed starting class. Thanks for hanging in a little bit longer too, Liz, and everyone who joined in today. We did have 47 participants. So thank you so much.
Awesome.
All right.
Yay.
We're going to end the session. Again, thank you, Liz. Actually, Liz, if you could hang on for just a minute, I do have
Sure.
a follow-up question.
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.